In the far reaches of the galaxy, where the stars burned brighter and the mysteries of the universe lay untouched by time, there existed a legend known only to a few. The guardian sage. Whispers of his existence circulated in forgotten realms, in the abandoned archives of ancient civilizations, and in the stories shared by the last surviving elders of humanity. It was said that the guardian sage was an ancient being, neither entirely human nor divine, but something in between, an entity summoned only in times of dire need, when the fate of entire species was at stake. This guardian was the protector of humanity, bound by an ancient oath to rise when the darkness threatened the light of existence itself. On the fringes of human-controlled space, in a small outpost colony, an unexpected signal was received. Commander Elena Valen stood in front of her console, reading the distress signal over and over. The message was garbled, but the urgency was clear. A massive alien fleet, known only as the Drekoth, was advancing. The Drekoth were ruthless, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. Their power was unmatched, and humanity had never been able to stand against them. Elena's hands trembled. She had been stationed on the colony for years, and she knew there was no way the small defense forces could hold off an entire Drekoth invasion fleet. She glanced at the terrified faces of her crew, their hope dwindling. "We can't fight them," whispered Lieutenant Mara, her eyes wide with fear. "We're doomed." Elena was silent for a moment, her mind racing. She knew that no conventional military tactic would work. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely outmatched. But there was one last hope, a desperate, unthinkable hope. She had heard the stories as a child, passed down from generation to generation, of an ancient guardian who could be summoned in the darkest of times. It was a legend, but what did they have to lose? "We're not done yet," Elena said, her voice steady. She turned to her communications officers. "Send out the summons." The crew exchanged confused looks. "The summons?" Mara asked, baffled. Elena nodded. "The guardian sage, we're calling him." The summons was sent into the void, an encrypted, ancient message designed to travel across time and space, hoping to reach the ears of the one who had not been seen in millennia. Days passed. The Drekoth fleet grew closer. Hope had all but faded. The colony's defenses were being hastily prepared, but everyone knew they were merely delaying the inevitable. And then, on the seventh day, something extraordinary happened. The skies above the colony darkened, not with the looming threat of Drekoth ships, but with an otherworldly storm. A vortex of cosmic energy tore through the atmosphere, crackling with power. The ground shook, and the people of the colony looked up in awe and fear. From the storm, a figure emerged. He stood tall, shrouded in a cloak of silver and gold, with eyes that burned like molten stars. His presence radiated a calm, ancient power. His face, though human in form, held the weight of countless ages. He was the guardian sage. Elena stood before him, her heart pounding in her chest. "You came," she whispered, hardly believing her eyes. The guardian sage turned his gaze to her, his voice deep and resonant. "I am bound by the oath I swore long ago. When humanity calls, I answer." Elena explained the threat of the Drekoth, the unstoppable fleet that was now only hours away from reaching the colony. She told him of the hopelessness they faced and the fear that gripped her people. The guardian sage listened silently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he raised his hand, and the storm around him intensified. "The Drekoth have long forgotten the power of humanity," the guardian sage said. "They believe you weak because they have never faced the strength of your spirit. I will remind them." With a wave of his hand, the skies above parted, revealing the incoming fleet. Massive warships filled the horizon, and the colony's alarms began blaring. But the guardian sage stood unshaken. He lifted both arms, and the ground beneath the colony pulsed with energy. Ancient symbols lit up around him, etched into the very bedrock of the planet, glowing with a golden light. Elena could feel the hum of power in the air, and for the first time in days, a spark of hope ignited in her chest. The Drekoth ships unleashed a barrage of energy weapons, but as the blasts hurtled toward the colony, they were stopped mid-air, frozen by the power of the guardian sage. With a flick of his wrist, the energy was redirected back toward the fleet, striking the warships with devastating force. In moments, what had seemed like an impossible battle turned in humanity's favor. The guardian sage was relentless. commanding the very forces of the universe to protect the colony. One by one, the Dracoth ships fell, until the once imposing fleet was reduced to scattered wreckage. When the final Dracoth ship retreated, the sky cleared, and the storm dissipated. The Guardian Sage lowered his arms, his task complete. Elena approached him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We would have been lost without you." The Guardian Sage smiled faintly, though his gaze was distant. "Humanity has always been capable of greatness, even when it forgets. My time here is done, but remember this, you are never truly alone. When the darkness rises again, so too shall the light." Before she could say another word, the Guardian Sage began to fade, his form dissolving into the wind, until only the faintest trace of his presence remained. The colony was safe, and the legend of the Guardian Sage lived on. In the depths of space, humanity's spirit burned brighter than ever, for they knew that in their darkest hour, the Guardian Sage would always answer the call. It had been months since the Guardian Sage had vanished, leaving behind a peaceful colony and a renewed sense of hope for humanity. Commander Elena Valen's reputation had spread far, and Weiss was hailed as the hero who summoned the ancient protector, the one who had turned the tide against the feared Dracoth. But Elena knew the truth. It wasn't her victory, it was the Guardian Sage's. Now, the galaxy was still reeling from the Dracoth defeat. Some believed the Sage would return again in times of need, but others whispered that his intervention had only bought humanity time, that the Dracoth would come back stronger, angrier, and Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this was true. She was still haunted by the image of their fleet, an unstoppable force, crumbling at the whim of a single being. Something darker was brewing in the cosmos. The Dracoth had been humiliated, yes, but they were only one threat among many. Elena had spent months studying the ancient archives, trying to learn more about the Guardian Sage. His sudden appearance had left more questions than answers, and the more she dug, the more she realized how little anyone truly knew about him. On the edge of human-controlled space, whispers of unrest were spreading. Other alien races, emboldened by the Dracoth's defeat, were beginning to test humanity's defenses. Trade routes were disrupted, colonies were raided, and rumors of strange anomalies in deep space were becoming impossible to ignore. One of those anomalies appeared near the outer rim colony of Phyros IV. Ships that ventured too close vanished without a trace, and the colony's long-range sensors had picked up strange energy signatures that didn't match anything in human databases. Some believed it was the Dracoth, regrouping in the shadows. Others thought it was something far worse. Elena, now promoted to Admiral of the Outer Defense Fleet, was called to investigate. Her fleet arrived at Phyros IV under the cover of darkness, the distant star casting long shadows across the barren planet. Elena stared at the anomaly on her console, an eerie, pulsating disturbance that seemed to warp reality itself. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. "Admiral, we're receiving strange readings from the anomaly," Lieutenant Mara reported from the tactical station. She had stayed by Elena's side ever since the battle with the Dracoth, loyal and sharp as ever. "Define strange," Elena replied, her eyes never leaving the view of the anomaly on the main screen. "It's like reality is fluctuating," Mara said, struggling to explain. "Space-time is bending around it. Our sensors can't get a solid read." "Is it dangerous?" Elena asked, though in her gut, she already knew the answer. "Unknown, but whatever it is, it's not natural." Elena leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. There was only one person or beings he could think of that might know what this was, the Guardian Sage, but how could she call him again? The last time had been a desperate measure, a one-time gamble that had somehow worked. But what if this was the true threat? What if this anomaly was something far beyond the Dracoth, something older, more powerful, a force that even the Guardian Sage had once feared? "Prepare a shuttle," Elena said suddenly. Mara looked at her, confused. "A shuttle? Admiral, we can send probes. I'm going down there myself." Elena's shuttle descended through the thin atmosphere of Phyros IV, its engines humming steadily. The closer they got to the anomaly, the more reality itself seemed to twist. The ground rippled beneath them, as if the very fabric of the planet was coming undone. Strange, flickering lights danced in the sky, and the stars above seemed to shimmer unnaturally. As the shuttle touched down near the heart of the disturbance, Elena felt a deep unease settle over her. This place was wrong. It didn't belong in their universe. "Stay here," she ordered her pilot and stepped out onto the barren ground. The air was cold and thin, and the silence was oppressive. Ahead, at the center of the anomaly, something shimmered, an obelisk of dark energy, twisting and pulsating, like a wound in space itself. Elena walked toward it, her heart pounding. She didn't know what she was looking for, but every instinct screamed that this was the source of the danger. This was why so many ships had vanished. The obelisk wasn't just an anomaly, it was a doorway. She stopped a few feet away from it, staring into its depths, and then, to her shock, she saw something inside, something familiar, a figure. The guardian sage. He stood within the swirling energy, his eyes closed, his body still as if he were in deep meditation. But something was different. His form was faint, flickering like a fading hologram, and his face was tense, strained. "Guardian," Elena called out, but her voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence. She took a step closer, reaching out with her hand, and suddenly the energy around the obelisk surged. A wave of force slammed into her, throwing her back. Elena hit the ground hard, gasping for breath, but she pulled herself to her feet, her determination outweighing the pain. The guardian sage's eyes opened, and for the first time, she saw fear in them. "Elena," his voice echoed, but it wasn't the deep, powerful tone she remembered. It was weak, as if speaking through a great distance. "You should not be here." "What is this?" Elena demanded. "What is happening?" The guardian sage hesitated, his form flickering again. "The darkness, it is awakening. The Dracoth were merely pawns. This is the real threat. I cannot hold it back much longer." Elena's heart sank. "What do we do? How do we stop it?" The sage looked at her, his eyes filled with both sorrow and resolve. "You cannot stop it alone. The strength of humanity will be tested like never before. You must prepare, and when the time comes, call upon me again. But know this, even I may not be enough." Before Elena could respond, the sage's form dissolved into the swirling energy, and the obelisk collapsed in on itself, vanishing into nothingness. Elena stood in the silence, her mind reeling. The guardian sage had warned her of a threat far greater than anything they had faced before, and now she had to return to her people and prepare them for a battle that could determine the fate of the galaxy. The call of the guardian sage had been answered once more, but this time, the future of humanity hung in a fragile balance. The message from the guardian sage weighed heavily on Admiral Elena Valen as she returned to her fleet. The flickering image of his fearful eyes haunted her thoughts. The anomaly had been a doorway and opening to a far greater and more sinister force than the Dracoth, and the sage, who had once stood invincible, was now struggling to hold back this darkness. As the shuttle docked on her command ship, the Resolute Dawn, Elena wasted no time. She called an emergency meeting with her top officers. The room was tense as she laid out everything she had seen on Phyro's IV. "The guardian sage warned us," Elena began, her voice steady but grave. "This threat is beyond anything we've faced before. It's not just a fleet or an alien army, it's something much older, something that has the power to unravel space itself." The officers exchanged worried glances. Mara, ever loyal and sharp, leaned forward. "What do we know about this darkness? Can we defend against it?" Elena shook her head. "We don't know enough, but the sage said we must prepare. He won't be able to hold it back much longer, and when it breaks through, we'll be the first to face it." Commander Davos, one of the fleet's most experienced strategists, spoke up. "Our defenses are strong, but if this force can manipulate space-time itself, we'll need more than just weapons. We need every mind, every resource we can muster." Elena nodded. "We need unity across all human colonies, planets, and fleets. This isn't just one battle for one colony, it's survival for our entire species." For hours, they discussed strategy, alliances, and the mobilization of resources. Messages were sent out to every human-controlled sector, warning them of the impending threat. Some would dismiss it as a legend or exaggeration, but Elena knew better. The guardian sage had spoken, and his words were not to be taken lightly. Days passed, and the preparations began. Fleets were mobilized, colonies fortified, and scientists worked tirelessly to understand the anomaly. But as the clock ticked down, the sense of unease grew. Reports of strange phenomena began to surface. Anomalies similar to the one on Phyro's Ivy were appearing across the outer rim, each one destabilizing the surrounding space. Ships vanished without a trace, and the stars themselves seemed to flicker unnaturally. Then, the worst happened. A massive rift tore open near the edge of human space, larger and more violent than anything they had seen before. From it emerged the darkness, true enemy that the Guardian Sage had warned them about. It wasn't a fleet, it wasn't an army, it was a living, shifting mass of energy, a void that consumed everything in its path. Stars dimmed and died as it passed, and planets were torn apart by its gravitational pull. The resolute Dawn received the report. Elena stood on the bridge, her heart pounding as she stared at the live feed. The darkness was moving toward human-controlled space. "We can't stop that," Mara whispered, her face pale. "We have to try," Elena said. "No doubt nod at her. Prepare the fleet, every available ship. We meet it head-on." The fleet was ready within hours. Thousands of ships from across the galaxy converging at the edge of human space. It was the largest armada ever assembled, humanity's last stand. As the darkness approached, the Guardian Sage's words echoed in Elena's mind, "Even I may not be enough." She clenched her fists. They had come too far, fought too hard, to give in now. When the darkness arrived, the battle began. Fleets of human ships launched wave after wave of attacks, missiles, energy blasts, and experimental weapons, all of them aimed at the approaching void. But nothing seemed to work. The darkness consumed the attacks as if they were nothing more than dust in the wind. Ships that ventured too close were pulled in, disappearing into the void without a trace. The commanders fought bravely, but it quickly became clear that no amount of firepower could stop it. Elena's mind raced as she watched the destruction unfold. The Guardian Sage had said humanity's strength would be tested, but they were losing. Desperation clawed at her. Where was the Sage? Had he abandoned them? And then, as if in answer to her silent plea, the sky tore open once more. The Guardian Sage appeared, his form glowing with a light so bright it seemed to push back the darkness itself. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood figures, beings of pure energy, radiating ancient power. They were the Guardians, the protectors of countless worlds across the universe, summoned by the Sage to stand with him in humanity's hour of need. "Elena," the Sage's voice boomed across the battlefield, "your people have fought valiantly. Now, stand with us." Elena's heart surged with hope. "All ships, fall back. Let the Guardians lead the attack." The fleet pulled back as the Guardians advanced, their energy weapons cutting through the darkness. The void shifted and writhed, resisting, but the Guardians pressed on, their combined power creating cracks in the darkness. And then, the Sage himself stepped forward, raising his hands toward the heart of the void. Energy surged from him, a blinding wave of light that collided with the darkness, forcing it to recoil. But even as the Guardians fought, the void continued to consume everything around it. The battle was far from over. Elena realized that this was not a fight the Guardians could win alone. Humanity had to stand with them, not with weapons, but with something deeper. She opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, listen to me. This isn't just about firepower, it's about who we are. The strength of humanity is in our unity, our resilience. Focus your minds, your wills, on pushing back the darkness. Together, we can fight it." One by one, the ships responded, and as they did, something incredible happened. The energy from the Guardian seemed to resonate with the combined will of humanity. The darkness faltered, its movement slowing. The void shrieked, an unnatural sound that echoed across the stars, but the light of the Guardians and the collective strength of humanity pushed it back, inch by inch. With a final surge of power, the Guardian Sage released a burst of energy that pierced the heart of the void. The darkness convulsed, collapsing in on itself, and with a deafening roar, it was gone sealed back into the rift from which it had come.